All right. Well, let's
Yep.
jump right in. I mean, where to start? Well, let's talk about food movement across the border. So, I wanted to get from you the short and long term damage, if any, done with the border blockade. So I just and of course, done to the food industry, because this isn't a political podcast. We could go on and on off mic
Oh
about
yeah.
different things, but let's just hone in on this very broad topic about
On
uh,
trades. Yeah.
yeah, on trade and specifically on the food business and the food trade. Short and long term assessment as you're thinking about it.
And I've been speaking to some industry pundits, importers, and it's not a great scenario right now. I mean, it's been complicated. It's been
Mm-hmm.
complicated for a while. The vaccine mandate was one thing. It basically brought some challenges, but those challenges were actually predictable, and you can plan your way with by doing business with companies in the U.S. and vice versa. It was possible to actually plan ahead
Mm-hmm.
because the decision was made back in November,
Yeah.
but the blockades just made things much worse, unfortunately. And so, as you know, Michael, I'm here this semester at the University of South Florida, so I do interact with a lot of Americans. I mean, last week it was all about obviously the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl took a big space in the news cycle, but and after the Ukraine and the Super Bowl, it was Ottawa. It was the
Mm-hmm.
border, and frankly, and President Biden actually did talk about the situation, particularly in relation to the bridge in Windsor, which really would see 25% of all commerce between the two countries.
Like
It's an
400, what's it, 450 million dollars a day move across that bridge between our two
Yeah,
great nations, right? Between the
and in
US and Canada.
agri-food, it's 8 to 12 billion a year. So just in
Huge,
food, and
huge.
and right now, obviously, you would see produce, dry stuff, being covered by this bridge, and so it was problematic. And of course, when the bridge was blocked, it became America's problem as much as Canada's problem. I mean, this I've always said in my talks that the that supply chains are the backbone of both economies, but the border itself is the spinal cord of our economy, really. Without the border, a functioning border, an open, fluid border, things really get messy very quickly. And we saw that with the car industry. We saw that with different industries. Unfortunately, I've heard reports from grocers that they had to scrap cargo produce because the cold chain was compromised as a result of delays. They had to reroute. They had to go to Sarnia instead of going through Windsor. I mean,
Which
so
is a
some of these,
small point. I've been to Sarnia a bunch of times, and it's not the Windsor Detroit
yeah,
infrastructure for moving
it,
goods, right?
exactly. So it just made things more complicated. And frankly, when I heard that the Trudeau government was going ahead with the with the
Emergency measure.
emergency, yeah, the emergency measure. I From an international perspective, so for America looking into Canada, I think it was actually the right message to send.
Mm.
Now, I don't know what the parameters of the decision are, because of course, you need all parties to support this and everything else. But
Yeah.
from a for America, I think that's the message you had to send, because as soon as we saw problems at the border, what I'm hearing in Florida are things like, well, maybe Canada is actually making a case for Buy America First, as
Mm.
an example.
Mm.
And as soon as you start hearing that, it's problematic. I mean, we need America, and America needs us. And so I'm pleased that something did happen in the end. I don't know, what are your thoughts, Michael?
Well, listen, the Emergencies Act is an act of proportionality. I mean, if, the Prime Minister's father put in the War Measures Act in the early 70s, which was a blunt 2x4 of an act, whereas basically martial law. So, it both sends a signal internal. It does a bunch of things around funding. We won't get into that because we could go down a long, dark rabbit hole about what's going on.
Exactly.
But, listen, at the end of the day, the border had to flow. I'm surprised. The one thing that's jumped out at me, when I was listening to the Premier Ford's, Ontario Premier Ford saying, we're going to pass some laws that make it illegal to do this. I'm like, aren't there laws already about blocking borders?
I know.
Is that
I
new?
know.
Is that new that there's no law against blocking a border? Anyway,
Upholding the law is an important thing when it comes to trades. And
listen,
so,
listen,
and it's
and
not
it's
just about,
yeah,
rights in your country. It's also about the image. I mean, I actually do think that Canada's image was
bruised.
impacted by what
I
happened.
think we're like the fruit that sat on the trucks. We're bruised fruit,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
I
And
think
of course, as you know, Michael, this morning we saw inflation numbers coming out
yeah. My
from
next
Statistics
point.
Canada, and I don't know if you went through the numbers, but
I
I
did.
actually went through the numbers this morning, and you could feel
Yeah,
that supply chain issues are impacting food prices, and border related
delays,
challenges are
complexity.
also impacting food prices as well. And
Yeah,
of course, we don't know if it's because of the mandates or the blockades, or I mean, because of course we've been dealing with sanitary measures impacting the border since November, because that's when the decision was made on both sides of the border. And so I
yeah.
actually do think it's important to calm things down as much as possible, so we can provide a predictable
Trading environment.
market trading environment for businesses. That's really the most important thing.